Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you 4 different ways of colouring with the Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers. I'm using this Let's Porty stamp set, which is available in our current core catalogue, which retires at the end of August. I love all the cute little faces in this background panel of the dogs, and I wanted to try 4 different ways of colouring to get 4 totally different looks to a card panel, and then dress it up with just the simple sentiments from here using the stitched brackets sets. So the first one I want to show you is quite simple. And basically what I've done, rather than colouring inside the dogs, is colouring outside the dogs. And I've just used the ice grey and all the same tone. So for this one, I think I used the mid-tone, and I've just coloured in all the areas where there aren't any dog images. And that's a really quick way to get a card done simply and effectively, and then just dressing it up with a couple of the sentiments and it's done. So that's extremely quick colouring. The other way to colour it in is to colour the whole entire panel. So you can see here I've used shading with the Tri-Blend markers. So I have other videos that I will link to at the end of this, another video showing how I've coloured in another set. But you can see here that these have all been coloured in, and then I've actually gone and done some shading on the edges of the images with the dark of the ice grey, and then coloured in the rest with the light. So it's just like doing an outline around the outside. Another way of colouring in is by just doing partial colouring, and I'll show you what I mean with that. I'm going to go just around the edges of the image where I think the shadow would be. And this is quite simple, quite fast, and don't overthink it, is basically the advice I give. So all I'm doing, I've started off with the dark, and then I'm going with the light to blend it just a little bit, but I'm not going to keep blending. It's just a partial shading. And I could leave it just as that, which is what I've done for these images here, or I could go in with the mid-tone if I wanted to and just run between those 2 lines. And that's basically it. So this entire card just has that type of colouring around the edges of the images. Another way of colouring in is by dotting. So for this one here, you can see that I've gone through, I've coloured, partially coloured in some of these. So this Dalmatian, I've only partially coloured him in by using dots all the way around, and some of them I've gone pretty much over the whole image with the light of the marker, gone in and dotted with the dark, and then dotted with the mid. So I'll do one of these images now so that you can see. I'm going to concentrate on this little dog down here. And I'm using for this one the tan shades. So I'm going in with the light and quite simply just colouring in the whole image. So that's just a simple basic colouring. Then I'm going to come in with the dark and just do some stippling, which is basically putting little dots around where I think the shadows will be. I'm not trying to join this up at all, and this is quite a good quick way of doing some fast shading. Rather than having to do the whole entire blending like I've done with these images here, I can just do some quick dots to get a really cool effect and some texture onto the images. Now that I've done the dark, I'm going to go in with the mid, and I'm just going to do more dots right over top of where the dark is, and blending it just by doing the dots, not with doing circular motions or shading at all. And some of it is joining up with the dark dots that I have done, and some of it is standalone dotting. So that's how to do a whole entire image, and as this dries it will blend out more. If you want to do just partial, like I've done here with this little dog, he's almost got like spots. So what I've done is gone with the light and drawn some little areas where I think his spots might be. And then using this as a guide, I'm going in with my dark and doing what I did before, but keeping within those spotted areas rather than covering the whole entire image. So that's the dark, and then I'll go in with the mid and do some more stippling or dotting. And I'm just going to push, make sure I've got the light end, a little bit of light on his muzzle here, and then put a little bit of the mid colour as dots. And if I want to add some more, I can go back in. Now, if you leave the ink to dry totally, you can go in and do your dotting and get even more contrast from what you're getting here. With this one here, I've noticed that this area here is a little bit stark, so I'm just going in with my mid to blend that up just a little bit, so it's not a harsh ending line. And because he's a little white dog, I want to give him a little bit more of shading, and I'm going in with the ice grey and just going around where I think the shadows will be, because white is not necessarily a totally flat colour. You do need to add a little bit of shading just to make it a little bit more dimensional. So that's basically it for the colouring. I'll run through these again. You've got a basic background, some edging, full-on colouring, and then some stippling. Now to finish these off, I've put them onto card panels, and I've trimmed very close to the edge. Now I could go around and just trim this out so it is the size of a card panel, but I always find it easier to follow the lines than leave a certain amount so that it's all even. And because with my colouring sometimes every now and then I go outside the lines, I want to trim that bit off, and then I'm going to show you how I treated the edges of these. So you can see when I've made the cut, there's a little bit of a white edge. So I can go back in and just trim that off a little bit. And don't worry if you trim too far, or if there is a little bit of a white edge, we're going to treat that so that disappears. And I've just used the marker, and I'm using the chisel tip end, and I'm just going to go around and run this. Now you can do this with an ink pad, you can blend it in with a dauber or even with a blending tool, but the ink going around the outside with the Tri-Blend marker is very, very quick. You don't have to get anything else out. You've already got your markers out to play with, and then that's ready to go. So we'll just make this into a card panel. And the reason why I like to trim that down too is if I want to pop that up with foam tape, then that's a nice finished edge. But for this one, I'm just going to lay it flat. Adhere this to the card panel. With all of the examples, I've stamped the sentiment from this same stamp set, and I've cut the sentiments from either the stitched scallop brackets, the stitched simple brackets, and the stitched brackets. So for this one, I've already run this through my die cutting machine. This is the stitched scallop bracket. I could stamp on here and put that straight on like I've done with this one. I've separated out and put one of the little bone images right in the middle, which finishes it off. But I quite like this look of having them off to the side. So I'm going to stamp this up. So for this, I'm just going to be mindful of which way I want these to run off the end. So I'm going to cut this in half. And this one's going to come out this side and this one to the right. So I'm going to put the Hot Diggity Dog. And because these are fairly fine outlines, I'm not going to use the foam. I'm going to stamp it straight onto my Versamat as a base. Sometimes I find with the foam, if it's a fine outline, I get a bit of a smushing and it doesn't necessarily come out all nice and clean. And then I'm going to take the little paw and put that up. And I've got a tiny little open heart from an old stamp set. There's lots of tiny little hearts and other little images that you can use from other stamp sets to fill in spaces. And to finish this one off, I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the black marker. You don't just have to go around the edges of a rectangle, you can quickly do it around a shape as well. And if you stay to the end of the video, I want to show you just a couple of things with doing this. I'm hardly pressing at all because I don't want to damage my chisel tip, but I don't really use the chisel tip for much else other than colouring in really big backgrounds. So that's done. And I quite like how having these off to the side still brings out all the effort that you've gone to with your colouring. And the thing that I wanted to show you with the edges, and I'll just do it on this piece here, is you can get a thicker edge. You'll notice here this has got a thicker black line than this one. So with the chisel tip, if you angle it so that it is in effect underneath the paper and you've got it coming out like that, you will get a finer line. If you angle it more towards you so that it's more on top of the paper, you will get a thicker line. So depending on what look you want, is all on how you hold the chisel tip when you're applying it to the background. I'll put some still shots up at the end of the video of the cards with the different techniques of colouring. I just wanted to let you know that the stitched brackets, all 4 of them, are retiring at the end of August. We have a new core catalogue coming in beginning September 1st when it goes live, and these are all on the retiring list. You can buy them individually or you can buy them as a bundle. So that's something to look at if you like the look of these brackets. I love using them, so I'm really glad that I've got those in my collection. I'll put some stills up at the end of the video, as I said, and a link to some real-time colouring for full images to get shading and how I do that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.